Okay, good afternoon everyone, thank you. I'm very proud to introduce my projects here, and working with 4 distinct groups. We've got South Devon College who are here today, Bruna and Rebecca, Brooklands College who sadly can't be here today, and the College of West Anglia. All 4 projects focused on assessment for learning, but you'll see from the presentations that actually the results were quite different. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to hand over to South Devon College. Rebecca and Bruna, take it away. Thank you.
Okay, so welcome. My name's Rebecca and I am an English lecturer at South Devon College. I deliver language and literature.
I'm Bruna Harrison. I'm also at South Devon College and I deliver English GCSE and A-level English language.
I'm a lead teaching and learning coach for English, and Bruna's a teaching and learning coach also for English. The essence of our project, working with these other colleges, was to use assessment for learning to encourage progress. We've got a starter activity for you, which is going to take just up to 5 minutes. Bruna will come around and she's going to give you all a piece of Play-Doh. You need to be in a pair with somebody, if possible. So if you can just join another table just to form a pair, if that's okay. There's a 3 down here. Oh no, we haven't given you the piece of paper yet. Okay, has everybody got a piece of Play-Doh? Yes. Has everybody got a partner to work with? Okay, so what we're going to do, in your pairs, one of you will receive a pink post-it, and one of you will receive a yellow post-it, okay? This is going to be placed in front of you. Don't turn it over until we say go. When you turn it over and have a look at what it says, turn it back over. Don't let your partner see, because you're going to be attempting to make what is written on this post-it, okay? So please don't turn it over till we say go, and then I'll use my phone to time you, and you will have 1 minute to make what is on your piece of paper, okay? Then we will call time, and then the idea is then that your partner will be able to try and guess what you've made, okay? Please don't worry, there's nothing majorly complicated to create. And then what you will need to do then is provide your partner with some feedback on how it could be improved, even if it's just one thing. Okay, you will then roll up your Play-Doh again, and then you will reattempt to make the same thing, but you will be using the feedback given by your partner. Okay, so please, we'll keep giving you timings, etc. Okay, if we just go around, yeah, so.
I don't know whose cat this is from.
I do actually. More chance at tea.
I'm not sure. It's like a step from it.
We're doing one more to improve.
Okay, thank you everybody. Time is up. Okay, so you may be thinking to yourself, what is this all about? Why have I been asked to make a butterfly or a medal out of Play-Doh? So let me introduce to you our project, which is called Level Up. Okay, it's been student driven, and I'll talk a little bit more about the name in a moment. But basically, we really wanted, as part of our project, to really look at the feedback marking cycle. So you'll be able to relate to the information on here. So the learner completes an assessment. It could be a formal letter that they've written or response to an analysis question too. They do a little assessment for you, and of course you mark it. And then you'll give them some kind of feedback to be able to give them some clear instructions as to what to do next. And then many places, you may be able to relate to your own colleges, Many places will give them an opportunity to upgrade, and quite often that's seen in the form of a purple pen. Has anybody in here used like purple pen upgrade? Now the unique selling point of Level Up, and this is the really important bit that's really been so fantastic for us to be able to celebrate this project, is that the work that they do in purple pen is then instantly regraded in the classroom. So if you are a learner that is working at maybe a grade 3 here, and then you've got steps to know how to improve from the teacher, you complete those steps, and then in the classroom, the feedback is actioned, and then it's remarked, and then the learner is given a new grade. So this is the difference between just giving feedback and doing nothing with the work that they've done to improve it. They could be writing a shopping list in their book if you don't mark it and tell them actually what they've done to respond to what you've said about making that formal letter better has got them somewhere. The project was completely led by students, and we first of all looked into the evidence-based practice of Ron Berger and also Jeff Petty. So the objects you made at the beginning of the session weren't just random objects, they were actually linked to theories from Berger and also Petty, who say that if feedback is acted on properly, it can actually be the most successful tool to lead learners to improve their grades. The other thing that we did was we set up a research focus group with students, and they really wanted their feedback upgrade to link to the digital culture that they live in. So they likened their levelling up process to being on their Xbox or things like that, or being on Instagram or Facebook. They wanted the teachers to come and give them praise and recognition for the work that they had done. Okay, so just to have a little look at this, I won't read the bullet points out, but on the first one, pre-level up, the green area is the amount of time that, as an English team, we used to spend marking, and the purple bit is the amount of time that the students spent acting on our feedback. It was completely disproportionate, and this was one of the real struggles that we had in our English team, that we were spending ages marking, and it was actually meaningless most of the time. So post-level up, this is our marking time. We've made it way more efficient because we're marking for one thing rather than the whole piece of work. And then the learners are spending an entire lesson acting on our feedback. And we'll show you some examples of what that looks like in a moment. Okay, I'll just pass over to Bruna, who's going to talk about her experiences with the AS course that she delivers.
Okay, so I deliver AS English language, and the lesson I'm going to talk to you about today has actually been made into a bit of a video that is used in my college for training purposes. Okay, so my students did a piece of work on accent and dialect. That's just to put it in the picture. I marked it. Then on my marking, I gave suggestions on how to improve. And in previous years, it would stop there, the cycle would stop there. I'd give out the books, I'd see these 2 targets or whatever, fine, I'll move on to the next piece of work. This time with the level up, I gave them the opportunity to remark in the class. Okay, sorry, go on. The common targets amongst the whole group formed the basis of the lesson that I taught. One of the common targets was rewriting their introduction. Many of the learners didn't know how to write an introduction at AS level because they'd just come from GCSE. This was right in September at the beginning of the academic year. And many of them weren't including enough theory. So basically, that formed the basis of my upgrade lesson. Just to use an example, Katie, one of my learners, this is her end of her piece of work, and this is my feedback. A very good first essay, I want to give a bit of encouragement. But here, the feedback I gave her was your introduction lets your essay down, please rewrite it. And of course, like I said, I haven't just said please rewrite it, but that formed the basis of the lesson of how to write a perfect introduction. So she, with her purple pen, rewrote her introduction in class, and then we wrote her whole essay with her new upgraded introduction, which I checked, and also made a couple of other changes, and she went basically from a B to an A. So how did I find the process? I loved the immediacy of it. It's like a mark a piece of work, next lesson or next week, you know, however long it took you to mark it, well, fine, you get your piece of work back, and you have to upgrade it immediately. This made learners more, enhance their understanding of the marking criteria, and it stopped them being passive. You know, just reading targets and that's it. They had to be active. And now an upgrade lesson, any assessment I do with this particular group, an upgrade lesson immediately follows. The feedback I got from the class has invariably been positive. They all saw the value in it. Katie, the student whose work I showed you, was actually interviewed by Rebecca about the process. And just taking a bit of a quote, the feedback helps us get a better grade, the process makes it all seem achievable. And I think that's the important aspect. Like these incremental differences to your essay means basically more marks, and that may mean going up a whole grade.
Okay, so here are some of the grade shifts in Bruna's group. So the green was obviously before the upgrade, and you can see here that the purple line is showing the grade shifts in terms of the levelling up following the feedback. And we also did this for a GCSE group as well, where you can see here that we've got learners and how the post achievement result has shifted along to the very high grades there too. Okay, in terms of wider college, we have Level Up now is in A level, it's also in GCSE, but we're also linking it to vocational areas. You'll see on here, this is our catering lecturer, David Wells. He said, I don't really do written feedback, most of mine is done audio. So what we've been doing is using videos and audio resources to go in and actually film the feedback process happening in the kitchens. So he's doing his more now with videos. So we are looking at sort of spreading it across the whole of college. The sharing of success too, we've got postcards, so it means that when the learners have upgraded their grade, we're able to put addresses on these postcards, and we can send these home as well so they can share the success. So for example, Emily may have got a grade 4, and then we will send a postcard home which we complete together at the end of the lesson to say Emily's gone from a grade 4 to a grade 7 in her English lesson today for a piece of work on an article or something like that. We use the project funds also to invest in purple pens. They're called our Level Up pens. So when we mark work, we get these out. I've got loads of them. So the students know that they have these special purple pens to be able to act on their work too. Okay. The other thing that we've done now is that we've brought the branding into actually doing typed feedback. So for example, this one here, which is just an example from literature. This is our previous feedback slip that we may have used. And this one now is a Level Up feedback slip. This saves time because these bits of feedback can go straight onto our electronic recording system for learners. So when we're talking to parents or working out targets, all of this is captured on our LEAP system at the college. And also it's brilliant too because we're able to share this with parents and other subject teachers for these particular students. So for every class that our students go to, they're actually doing the Level Up process, which is great because we've got a real sort of culture and a real consistency across the subjects. Okay, so that's our project. We've got a video to show at the end, but we want to also represent today Brooklands College, who can't be with us. So Bruna's just going to take you through some of their kind of highlights of their projects and share those with you.
Okay, I've got to say I can't really because I'm not from Brooklands. I'm just representing what they did. But if there are any questions, if I could just direct you to Bob and Rosemary, and I'll be able to answer because they oversaw these projects. Okay, in Brooklands, the challenge was, as many of you have found, learners are just not reading. So they decided to change the way a text is presented, adding images and relating text to modern day. And here's a good example. It's a 19th century text, but the issue like relating it to in modern day is ASBOs. So there's a clear, I mean, you know, learners can probably identify with that text. And here's just, I'll let you read it. Here's some comments from the learners at Brooklands College.
Will these resources be available, Rosemary, as well for people to have a look at also?
I think what Brooklands found was that the learners were just starting to engage with the text. They were just switching off as soon as they actually found it. So working together, teachers and learners, how do we make these texts more appealing? How do we get looking at them? So they broke down the structure of the text, added images, changed the layout, changed the format, added perhaps questions that helped with the understanding in order to explore the text and really sort of challenge learners. And then slowly withdrew those supports that when they were faced with an exam text, they actually knew how to start to engage with it.
Okay, the College of West Anglia, I quite like this one. They found that a lot of the college, I like them all, I didn't mean to say like that, you know, I can identify with this one. They found that a lot of the kids that were coming from, students that come from various schools, had acronyms that they were asked to remember in English. And there were so many different acronyms, they just thought we're going to abolish those. We're not going to have any more acronyms. We'll abolish those totally, so the learners won't get confused. And instead, they introduced sentence starters of how to answer a question, because as you know, probably the most difficult thing for learners, oh, I don't know how to start it. Well, I got around that by having these standardised sentence starters. On the next slide, we've got an example of some of these acronyms that they abolished, like SLIMY and what that stands for, and FLIRT and PEEL and SMILE, etc. PE is one that we all know, obviously. So they abolished all of those, and instead, for question 4, for instance, on the reading paper, they've got a sentence starter. So whatever you're writing, start with this. It can be a good idea of how to start answering that question.
Okay. And then, so can I just say on that one, sorry, what they found was that the students could remember what those acronyms were actually being used for, and they were writing them down, and then they were interpreting them in different ways. They couldn't remember what the piece stood for. Was it punctuation? Was it something completely different? And that's where all the confusion came. And because learners coming from different schools were using different systems, so they just binned all of those and said, actually, let's do something different. And they looked at sort of question starters that the learners helped evolve, and the question starters are still evolving, again, to help them engage with what they need to do.
Okay, the last one, develop. They were helping students grow with particular focus on high need students in the 14 to 19 category. They moved away on this fixation of grades. Learners when they get their feedback, not looking at feedback, just looking at the grade, whether they got 3 or 4 for GCSE and so on. They instead used a breakdown of the GCSE English assessment objectives to mark, and this allowed learners of lower ability to celebrate incremental changes. So it might have not meant in reality that they've gone up a whole grade from a 3 to a 4, say, but they've gone up in particular marks that they've given for a particular assessment objective. So this is an example of the breaking down of the particular assessment objectives, and they found that it improved, I know you probably can't see this, but in general it improved attendance, it improved motivation.
Okay, and then think, some of the student feedback, isn't it?
Yeah. So improved attendance, improved engagement and application in lessons. The quote at the top, very meaningful. I didn't want to come to college today, but decided to because it's important. So we're building their confidence and motivation basically because of these incremental changes that we're making in their marks for their assessment objectives.
Yeah. Again, as Bruno was saying, it's about self-belief in learners because they were getting these grading marks like a 2 or a 3, and although they thought they were putting in effort, they were trying to change it, that grade didn't shift because the grade banding is so wide. So in order to increase that motivation, as Bruno just said, they didn't fix the grading, they didn't put any grades on the paper, but just marked them for the improvements they've made.
Okay.
I'll just mention, just if I can,
Yeah,
Bruno,
sure.
and,
Thank you.
one of the interesting, I was talking to Tom, who led the Brooklands College project, and one of the interesting things that we didn't touch upon there was Tom actually involved students as part of the project team at the start to discuss what topics they thought they would be interested in reading about. They knew they were going to have to read, stuff in the 19th century. So that was really interesting, and I think Jean will talk a bit later, I'm sure, about how doing action research projects, things come out of them that you don't really expect to happen. And I think Tom was very impressed with the way students got involved in talking with their teachers about the challenges that they faced in terms of the topics, the format of the text, the kind of questions that were being asked. And talking with Tom last week, it was quite interesting to hear him already begin to plan to increase that level of learner involvement in choosing the content and to some extent the format of the activities. The other thing that I just wanted to mention is that Tom also benefited from a big Padlet board that some of my colleagues in the Eastern region put together a couple of years ago around a whole range of interesting texts that we thought would engage our learners, and Tom actually was very grateful for that Padlet. In fact, some of the excellent resources he developed were based on some of those texts. So I just mentioned that in the sense that one of the heartening things about my involvement in this project is to see how people have taken ideas from both the school sector and from sixth form colleges and from other previous ETF projects as well. So, some really quite distinctive elements are in those two projects.
So the college has made a sort of like a training stroke promotional video for
This
our
is South Devon College.
for
which
South
you
Devon
represent.
College. Yeah, and we'd just like to share that with you. There's also some videos of students talking about how the level up process has influenced them and helped them to progress.
So we had to write an essay discussing the idea that some accents are more attractive than others. Because in our exam we have to write an essay on either accents, dialect, language and gender, or language and occupation. So we've moved on to language and gender now. We're going through each of them and doing practice lessons. So she gave us AO1 and AO2 targets because that's what our mark adds up to.
Okay.
So AO1 is our structure of the essay and AO2 is the actual content in it. So my improvement was for AO1 because my introduction was to GCSE and it needed to have more A-level terms. And I wrote it this essay we'll talk about, and it has to be more subjective.
Okay.
Sort of an overview.
Yeah.
And so she showed us some example instructions on the board, and then that helped me to rewrite mine. Because it gave examples of how to start the introduction, and how to easily flow it into the first paragraph. So I upgraded my introduction class and that got remarked by Bruna to give me a B+. So then I took this home and typed it out again with the improved introduction at the start and a few extra like summary sentences at the end of paragraphs and just an extra sentence or two in my conclusion, which then took my grade up to an A. I feel good because especially because it's not unachievable sort of. It's not that far away in terms of marks. It's there's 3 marks between a B and an A, and it just makes it feel a lot more achievable than otherwise. So when we got our grades, we asked Bruna oh, how far apart are the grades? And so she showed us the marks that correspond to the grade, and that sort of showed us that there wasn't that big a step. Because 20 out of 30 is a B, and we were well, that's 10 marks. How can that be a B? That seems a lot. Is an A really high? And then obviously an A was just 3 more marks, and that makes it seem a lot more achievable. Yeah. Being in jobs, because obviously you can get promotions. So if you were doing something wrong in your job, you'd want someone to say, or oh, that's not how you do it, or you need to do this to improve, and that would actually help you progress in your career. I think reflection is important because nobody's perfect. You have to be able to reflect on the things you do badly in order to just improve in life in general.
Well, we got them back and we got time to read through our work again and check our mark, and then after that we got given feedback from our teacher and assistants so we could upgrade it and rewrite a paragraph which we thought included AO2 and AO3 discussion. Well, the AO2 means you have to write more about how you think it's influenced people, and it's when you gain extra marks and include language features. Before, in my old school, we would maybe do half an hour and we weren't given any support, and we were asked to rewrite a paragraph, and you never really got much further, and you would end up getting the same grades repetitively. You feel really rewarded and you feel like you're making progress, because when you first get your mark you may not really like it and you may feel a bit bad about it, but then when you progress you feel really happy with yourself.
So we got two little slips. One of them was talking about what we were actually marked on, and then we got another one which showed us what our improvements to do were, and we got 2 to 3 of them. So we had a whole lesson basically, and we were given our books back and told to written in purple pen go through all of our little tasks, and we were given a sheet that would help us through the way. And so I had to go through some of mine that were writing a couple paragraphs, and then the sheet would give us sort of tips for improvement. It gave me confidence for other exams throughout the whole school completely. So I would be able to know exactly I can actually do this because I managed to do it before. I can just do it again and improve on every exam and everything I do. So a lot of it has been to do with getting over hurdles that have been oh, I will just give up basically. I won't do this anymore because I don't know how to do it. But instead it gave me that if I do it and it's wrong, I can always improve on it for future, and I can also I sort of know if it's to do with English, I know where I can improve. So say the AO2 discussions, I know exactly what to do for them because I've been told what to do. Being able to say, oh well, I got a grade 8, that's possibly the highest, well, it's almost the highest you can get, and that's.
And did you share that success with anybody?
Oh yeah, I was all my mates. We were discussing what we got and basically just saying that I got almost top grades, and just them lot were saying, oh, they were congratulating each other on everything they did and stuff like that. Yeah, my parents always ask what I've got, and they usually, if I give them a good grade, they'll usually I get sometimes rewarded, sometimes they'll just yeah, I'll just get stuff, and they'll just say congratulations.
Anyone got any questions?
Yeah, we've got a few minutes for questions.
The first slide up, develop. So I'll try to take a picture of it.
Oh, develop, yeah, of course. I need you to get the PowerPoint.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good to see all the ones for the other colleges.
Just that one, just make it too quickly for me.
Yeah.
Was there a particular question you had about develop? No, I just wanted to take that first slide. I think with develop, we need to realise we have totally different cohort of learners to
Yeah.
what South Devon College would feel dealing with, and attendance was particularly problematic as was
They're more of a referral.
well-being and everything that goes around that.
Anna, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering your pro formas that you developed and the marking feedback, are they available? Like,
Well,
are they
yeah.
Wait, is your booklet available?
Yeah.
We could do a bit of a swap here, yeah.
Yeah, they,
Yeah, it'd just be really useful to see where you've got, they looked
Yeah.
really interesting and I was just wondering.
yeah.
I think possibly if we give our email addresses to Rosemary, then because unfortunately we had to dash off before the end of the
But they're
session.
all in the with the report, aren't
Yes,
they? The
yeah.
frameworks. Yeah, but certainly
I'll
more than
text
happy
you
to
my-
share.
Me and Anna know each other. I'll text you my email address and
Like all in one place, yes, we can all share.
Is that it? That one?
That's it, I think, down one, that's right.
Is that it?
Thank you.
We will make all of the PowerPoints available to you, and we're trying to video the presentations as well, so hopefully you'll be able to see those as well. Any more questions, anyone? We've got a couple of minutes before the other groups return back into the room, so.
Is this the first year you've done it?
Yes.
So you haven't seen your results yet, it'd be quite interesting.
no, I mean in GCSE we do November retakes, and that was quite compared to that's the first time we did November retakes as a whole cohort, and that was successful. It was better than we thought it would be.
With GCSE, are you doing this just with bigger questions or what? I mean, how does that lesson look when you say that's so? I understand it in an A-level concept.
Yeah.
Because obviously the essay is quite a long piece of work, but from a GCSE point of view, say with lower, like grade 2s, for example, how much time are you giving them in that lesson afterwards? Are they looking at more than one question?
Yeah, I mean, every time we do the level up, it would be after they have done a significant piece of work. So if we've done 2 lessons on writing an article or something like that, it might be then the 3rd lesson we'll give them a little assessment on it, and at that point then we might just mark it for content, say. So then we would set a clear sort of suggestion for improvement. We tend not to be calling them targets as well, suggestions for improvement, and we'll give them a couple of things that they need to do. And then we would scaffold that lesson as well. So we'd give them some examples of what that could look like, have a discussion, and then they would be able to see then from their slip what their letter was to begin with, and then what it would be after with the additional word count and extra information in it. So it's not after every single thing that they do. It's more, it's more of us after a significant piece of work.
Yeah.
What we also do at the college is we have a normal class book, and then we have our assessment books. So if we ever have sort of like learning walks or observations, the assessment books are the ones where if someone was to say, how can you prove that your marking is helping your learners to progress? That is the book that I would go, and I can show them really clearly, I've marked that piece of work, I've advised that they need to do X, Y and Z, they've actioned it and their grade has gone up. And we had a chair of governors that came in from another secondary school in the Bay, and it was amazing how the learners could just really be able to talk through this process and how useful that they found it. So it's transformed my marking and other people that I've worked with, because I just felt so much of my marking was pointless, because I'd mark for everything and the learners would do nothing with it, and I'm happy to admit it.
I suppose the obvious question is, what you said at the start, you've marked it once, you give them the feedback, this is how it used to be, and then nothing would happen.
Yeah.
You've marked it once now, they've got their kind of dirt time,
yeah,
to complete that. Are you then marking it again?
Then we mark what their improvement work is. So say
how's that reduced marking time then?
Because you do it in the class. So you would literally just look at that maybe. So the secret is until the culture develops in the classroom is to keep the target or the suggestion for improvement really simple. So with a lower group, you might just do one simple target. So if I had everybody in here that had their book, I would come up with the suggestion, you'd be acting on the feedback with your purple pens, and I have, through the project, we were also able to get some stamps, so I'd literally go, feedback action, go to the slip, and then I would just tick what you've done, look at the grade boundaries that are on the slip, and be able to say that by adding in that extra paragraph, you would have gained however many more marks, and actually now you're working at a grade, whatever it would be. So the level up kind of feedback is done in the classroom.
So you're using a sort of a workshop time then, aren't you?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there have been challenges with it, particularly with the November retake, because we had so much pressure to go through our scheme. Yes, exactly. And I think the thing is with the level up process, it's really helping to deepen the learning, because if you're asked to write a formal letter and you're only working at a grade 3, you're better to improve the one you've written rather than give a completely fresh task to do. So it's giving the learners more time to master the skills and deepen their kind of learning. And also, now the groups have done about sort of 9 different levels up, you can see that culture is in place. So their metacognitive skills are also developing, because they are completely active in their approach to feedback. Whereas a lot of students before would look at their books and go, it's a 3, I'm rubbish, and they'd never look at it. Whereas now they see the level up as an opportunity to actually embrace rather than dread getting their marks back, because they know the moment we get it back, we'll be able to do something to make it better.
Yeah.
So it's way more positive. So
we just started to do something similar, and they do a first attempt, they'll give them the feedback, then they do the second attempt, level up.
Brilliant.
And it does take time. I know you mean about marking, and initially it does take time. It's a mindset that you have, and you get practicing quicker with it, and you're not spending hours over book size as well.
Do you devise the targets after you've had a quick look at the issues?
Absolutely,
that have come up? You
yeah.
kind of need to do a flashcard, don't you, and think, well, these are the
Absolutely.
And then come down on about 2 key things. Ideally.
That's exactly what Bruna,
we do.
we do.
It's got to be informed by your glance.
So there's more generic targets, so it's making it quicker, and that's why our marking became quicker, because we'd mark, and then we look at common things that we need to troubleshoot.
That's really important, because I think often we don't do this because we think it's all got to be so individualised that we lose the whole sense of group, don't we?
Yeah.
If you can identify common things, then you can keep that.
Because prior to this, I would mark an article, and I'd mark it for content, I'd mark it for language techniques, I'd mark it for spelling. And they'd look at it and it was just like cognitive overload, and then they wouldn't do anything with it. I couldn't possibly have been able to help 15 learners in one room with all of these things I'd said to them individually to do. So all the time I'd invested in working on a Sunday morning, marking books, was pointless.
Yeah.
So you're better to mark for 2 things and do it brilliantly and let the learners get something out of it than mark for everything and then not do anything.